Hey there, modern vegans and vegan curious. My name is Margaret, and today I'm going to be talking about Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, was first published in English in 2014, and that's when I picked up a copy of it. I heard about it and I knew that I couldn't wait to get it. For one thing, I'm kind of interested in everything that's Japanese, always have been. And so the fact that there was a Japanese book on tidying, I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing. And also because I loved the name. I just thought it was kind of inspiring and the cover art was lovely. I picked it up in an ebook and started reading it and knew that I'd made a great choice right away. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up is a system for cleaning your home, but also for discovering who you really are as a person. And that's one of the reasons that it's interesting to me, not just as a way of being a minimalist, which is something that is interesting to me, but it's also a way of discovering who you are as a person. And that part of it relates very much to veganism for me. And so I found the book not only helpful from the standpoint of cleaning my physical space, but also for cleaning up my diet as well. In her book, Marie Kondo promises that you are going to be able to transform your life with the Konmari method. And the Konmari method is a way of organizing your possessions and getting rid of the clutter that is very programmatic and prescriptive. So if you don't like following directions and you don't like rules, then this book is probably not for you. I will say my mother still enjoyed the book, despite the fact that she does not like rules or guidelines, but she found a lot of very interesting stuff in it as well. So even if you are a little bit more of a rebel, you'll probably still enjoy it. Marie Kondo believes there's a very specific way in which to begin cleaning out your home. And that's what this book is about. It's about tidying up your home, tidying up your physical space. And she asks that you start with your clothing and then move on to your books. And after that, you go to papers and then komono, which are like miscellaneous items. I think the order is very important, and one of the reasons that she structured it in the way that she does is that clothing tends to be the easiest thing for us to get rid of. We have the least emotional attachment to clothing. Usually people do tend to be more attached to things like books and papers, photos and memorabilia, and so clothing is a really good place to start and to begin honing your skills at something Marie Kondo calls discovering that which sparks joy. And she uses this phrase a lot in the book, sparks joy. And for her, it just means when you really love something, when something makes you happy, that you're going to use it and that it's going to be something that will be useful in your life instead of just a meaningless piece of clutter. Of course, there are items that don't necessarily spark joy, but are still necessary, like toothbrushes and things like that. And she's not asking you to necessarily get rid of anything that you need, just the things that you don't need. And if you don't need it and you don't love it, then why have it in your life? In addition to having a specific order in which to clean your belongings out, Marie Kondo also has a specific process. She asks that you take all of your clothing, for example, and she does have it broken down into some categories like tops and pants and underwear, things like that. But you bring everything from one category out, you put it on your bed or on the floor, and you go through everything, pick each item up, and this is really important, you're supposed to physically pick up the item and see if it sparks joy. For some of you, this is going to sound very airy-fairy and almost spiritual, but there is a sense in which our belongings relate a great deal to who we are as people. And if it does not connect with you, then you don't really need it. And I think we all notice that often we kind of apply the Pareto principle to our clothing. So if you're not familiar with that, that's kind of the 80-20 rule. And you'll find that you wear 20% of your items 80% of the time. I know that's something that I do, and I think it's kind of clear with everybody, but that tends to be what we do. Even though we have so many more possessions these days, we only use relatively few of them on a daily basis. Now, some people are going to argue that by getting rid of these items, by ridding ourselves of this junk, we're also ridding ourselves of things that we may actually need. And this is kind of the frugality impulse. I think a lot of us who grew up with grandparents that lived through the Second World War and things like that, we tend to be more we've grown up, especially if your parents were baby boomers or whatever, you probably grew up being told, not to throw things away because you could use it for another day. And that was certainly the case with me growing up. I knew that we might use things for, say, repairs around the home and things like that. But I think it's also important to realize, like, if you're a millennial like me, how often do you do repairs around your house? And I think that's a worthwhile question to ask. If you've got a sewing machine that belonged to your grandmother, when's the last time you actually used it? Have you ever sewn anything? That's one of the first things I got rid of when I did the Konmari method, was a sewing machine, because I had sewn like a few things with it, and I realized that it's actually cheaper and more efficient for me to go buy those things at the store. And for some people, I mean, if you love sewing, then that's going to spark joy. You'd look at your sewing machine and think, oh, I love that thing. That's part of what makes me me. But for me, it's just a piece of junk. And that's kind of what you're doing throughout this process. You're discovering what is important to you and what is not important to you. And it's building you up as a person, not just as a consumer of goods. When you are learning about yourself this way, and I do think it's a process of learning, tidying up your space teaches you a great deal about yourself. It teaches you what your shortcomings are, the things that you collect that you don't even use. If you shop for too many shoes, then you're going to notice that and think, oh, maybe that's something that I need to work on. And I think that is very helpful for all of us. If you're inclined to think that this is just something that people who are privileged are able to do with their lives, I think you should think about this. My family, for example, we live in a slightly less than 900 square foot condo, and it seems huge. And that's because we have very few things. And so for 4 of us to live in this space doesn't feel crowded at all. On the other hand, if we had a bunch of stuff, this place would be too small. We'd be forced to rent, a 3-bedroom apartment. And if we did that, then we would have less overall money to use for other things, and we would basically be paying rent for objects. And I think that, to me, objects are not more important than the other things in my life, and I can't really imagine paying to own a larger home or to rent a larger apartment or own a larger apartment just in order to house my objects. And I think it's something to consider. Are you inviting an unwanted guest in the form of, excess belongings to occupy your home when you don't really use those things? And that's why some people have applied a $20 20-minute rule. Like, if you can buy it for less than $20 and it's easier to get, it'll take you less than 20 minutes to find it for less than $20, then you can get rid of it. And I think this applies more to, duplicates of things. I would certainly get rid of any duplicates. Pick the things that you like the most and get rid of the things that you aren't using. And I might even say $5 5 minutes, because there's plenty of things that you can replace within 5 minutes for less than $5 that you keep around the house for absolutely no real reason. And so you kind of have to decide it for yourself. And again, that's why sparks joy is so important. If you don't need it, if it doesn't spark joy, then it's really important to rid that from your life. So how does KonMari relate to veganism? When I first made the decision to go vegan, I wanted to get rid of everything in my house that had animal products. And I remember going through each item in the cupboard one by one and looking at the ingredients and getting rid of the things that had animal products in them. I realized, first of all, that those things really didn't bring me joy. Once you see things through new eyes, you realize that, at least for me, because I saw the world very differently at that point, holding objects that contained animal products, you could feel that they didn't bring you joy. It was very apparent. It made me sad to hold up things and realize the kind of suffering and hardship that this had cost another creature. And it was obviously very easy to get rid of those things. And as I was going through the cupboards and doing all of that, I also realized that having a more minimalist diet, and by that I mean, especially one person mentioned this last week, but buying a lot of foods that are only one ingredient, or only a couple of ingredients, buying things like rice and potatoes and pasta and vegetables. It's much simpler. And I find it's even simpler for cooking and things like that. I feel like our cooking now sparks joy. Every ingredient that goes into our food is something that we know is necessary and useful to us. And it feels different. And I think that that's something that the reason why I think all of us should go through this process at least once in our lives. And Marie Kondo says that if you do this once, you'll never need to do it again. I'd sort of disagree, because I think probably when you move, you may need to do it again if you move. But overall, the idea is that once you find a place for everything, and once you get rid of the things that don't bring you joy and aren't necessary, then your life becomes a lot simpler. It's easier to find things. It's easier to put things away. And it varies for every person how extreme this is going to be. I was kind of shocked when Marie Kondo was talking about her own purses, plural, and putting them away at the end of the day, and she takes out her wallet and everything else that's in her purse and puts it in a drawer. And one of the reasons for that is because she does save unused bags in her closet or wherever. She has extra purses, and she fills them up, I think, when they're not in use, and she has empty purses. So this woman she's not an extreme minimalist, and I think that's part of the thing about the book. Even though it is rather minimalistic, it's not extreme minimalism, and I don't really advocate for extreme minimalism. So rest assured that you can own, more than a few pairs of shoes and still consider yourself a minimalist. It has more to do with keeping the clutter, and by that I think there's the dietary clutter, the mental clutter, the physical clutter out of your life, because when you do that, it makes you more productive, it makes you happier, it gives you time for the people in your life instead of focusing on the things in your life, and all of those are very good things. Our family's always been sort of minimalist. We've never had a lot of stuff. We've always lived in smaller spaces. I grew up in a home that was only like 750 square feet, I think, for 4 people. So I am used to living in small spaces. But the difference is, when I was growing up, our space was much more full of things. And of course, when your space is full of things, you spend more time taking care of them. You spend more time cleaning. You spend more time doing all sorts of things. And that's why I think it's really worth it to examine what matters to you most in your life, and when it's worth it to really have all those things, and when it's not so much worth it. And everything you do in your life is a choice, and you are choosing whether you want those things in your life or you don't want those things in your life. Even if you don't go through that process of holding it up and seeing if it sparks joy, you've already made a decision by bringing it in and not doing anything about it. And that's why I think it's so critical to address these things seriously. I think that the life-changing magic of tidying up teaches you that it's worth it to take the time to seriously address these things, and that doing so will change your life. It will give you more joy, because you're able to be more effective. You can spend more time volunteering. You can spend more time with your community. You can spend more time with your kids. And even for children, I notice with my kids, they do the same process themselves. I ask them all the time, like, does this spark joy? Does this make you happy? And they frequently will say, no, because kids don't need to keep a whole bunch of junk either. They are very happy with very little, and what they really want is time with their parents. Like, if you're a parent, at least at the age my kids are at, because they're 5 and 7, what they want is time with us. They don't want time with us, working, cleaning up the house and taking care of everything. They want to spend time with us. And by having less, by making space in our lives for them, we are able to have a more fulfilling life. They are able to have a more fulfilling life, and it works for everybody. I think the same can be said with our diet. It takes us half as much time to prepare now that we're vegan. Cooking is a very simple matter, very simple affair. The most time-consuming cooking I do all week is baking bread, because I like to bake bread. And that's one thing where, I have 2 KitchenAid bowls, like those big metal mixer things for the KitchenAid mixer. And those are very useful to me, and they give me joy because I love baking bread. So that's something that not everybody needs 2 bowls for their mixer, but I do, because I use both of them constantly. And yeah, baking bread is the most time-consuming thing I do all week. We eat every meal at home, and we still have plenty of time because it takes us a few minutes to cook, because plant-based cooking is faster. You soak beans, you stick them in a pot, and your dinner is ready. Like, it's just a lot faster, really, than having to prepare meat, having to have 2 separate sets of dishes, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's something that's worth thinking about, because when you're thinking about what sparks joy, it's not just what's in your closet, it's also what's in your kitchen. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this book. It's quite popular now, so I'm sure some of you have had the chance to read it. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.